recently, several not-for-profit organizations have approached the city and the county for funding. Both government entities have and continue to fund certain not-for-profits. Back in 2010, we counted over 600 registered not-for-profits in the community. Bob, as a former mayor, what's the criteria used to determine which not-for-profit gets funded?
You know, there is a criteria, and you know what we looked at back in the day, and keep in mind, a lot of not-for-profits in our budget get a line item. Okay, other not-for-profits, they kind of rotate in and out. All right, the ones that get a line item are ones like Community Free Clinic, because we look at that and we say, okay, they are serving not only the uninsured, but the underinsured, people who work every single day and, you know, still can't afford insurance.
And they're doing it less expensively potentially than the government could do it.
Yes, well, I mean, apparently, because, you know, now with the ACA, I mean, everybody has insurance, right?
Well, it seems so, but Carl, he seems to be,
can't afford it.
He seems to be placing it on mission and merit. What do you think? Mission and merit, or?
I'm not sure what else you look at if you're looking at civil government funding nonprofits. What else? I mean, what other criteria are you going to have?
Well,
whether or not they serve the community or not.
Well, let's take the Maryland Theater. They recently got a chunk of change from both the city and the county.
Yes,
I mean, it's really over $500,000.
When you,
but that's an economic development.
All right, there you go, economic development.
Yeah,
so that's a good criteria.
Even though they're a not-for-profit, they're not like a service need not-for-profit. You know what I mean?
Well, you know,
they just have that status, basically. I mean,
in my opinion, government has, according to the Constitution, responsibility for the health and welfare of the communities, all of them. So I'm with you, the health clinic, maybe Safe Place, things like that. But the county has a process now that there is a community funding organization. We have $1.6 million as a line item budget. There's a committee that is appointed by the commissioners. They review all applications and all results. And so they try to do a results-based, it's very static. I don't think the organizations that are funded change very much at all.
The 1.6 million, where's that funding come from?
Well, it's a tax dollars, absolutely. Back when the funding...
general fund tax dollars?
General fund tax dollars. Back when the funding was set up for the Gaming Commission, where half went to the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the other half came over to the county for economic development. At that time, there was an amount of money, about $1 million or so, set aside for nonprofits, and the law said that that corpus could not be used for anything else but nonprofits.
Right.
So that's a holdover from before the gaming fund. The gaming funds aren't tax dollars. They're collected tax. You know, they're earned taxes from economic endeavors. But this is straight line. You pay a tax on your property, it's going over, and 1.6 million of it hits. The largest portion, almost half, goes to the Commission on Aging. And I don't want to burden this discussion on why, but again, it's mission to those that are perceived to be underfunded. But I'm going to tell you here recently, one of the commissioners came to the table and suggested through a motion that a museum get a certain amount of money for a 3-year period, $30,000 for 3 years. So what is a museum? Does that work for you guys?
It works for me. I'll count a museum as service to the community.
I mean, don't get me wrong, not that, you know, government's doesn't ever use smoke and mirrors or anything, but, you know, there's ways to fund that entity without actually having a line item and things like that. I mean, you do it in other ways. You know?
Well,
I mean, we've done it, you know, we've done it for years at the city. You know, we've helped with the parking lot or lighting, or and the county has jumped into right. We do it, you know, that way it doesn't come out of their bottom line. You know, it's basically our contribution to them, and that's it.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
like it was for the library.
Maybe it's different for you guys, but about a year ago, Art and I sat down and we realized that it had been 5 years since we went to any entertainment venue other than a local nonprofit. That we were fully satisfied on entertainment, and it was a ticket here and a ticket there and a ticket there. And that was fine, and what it shows you was the creativity of the local nonprofits and the dedication to their mission. Now, as a commissioner, when we set up this committee, community funding thing, the people that came to me personally and said, you can't do that, you're wrong, felt they were going to lose money because they didn't have, for various reasons, but they weren't able to do a Muddy Mamas and a slide downtown for Safe Place and things like that. So they wanted the government to sort of fill that gap of where they could not raise enough money to do their mission. And so is that the role of government?
So I think that, I think it does go to, I think it needs to be based on the mission. I think it needs to be based on whether this nonprofit can provide the good or the service less expensively than if the government took it on, which in many cases it can.
Yeah.
And you also have at most of these nonprofit a board of directors, well, all of them, that are leaders in the community that are going to make sure that those funds are well spent. Okay. And I know there are, and having it be outcome-based I think makes sense. If you look at the United Way and some of the things that they've done, they are much more about outcomes. Just don't tell me where we're going to give money, tell me who's going to benefit and how. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I have fought for a number of years, and you mentioned the museum, and I am on the board of directors for a local museum who has asked both the city and the county for funding every year. And arts is an important thing. But I've fallen on the side of yes, it's okay to fund it. But that's a struggle I have in my own head, because at what point does that not-for-profit, at what level should we serve? Do we serve just basic needs? Or do we serve, health, food, that type of thing is one thing. But funding an exhibit at the Discovery Station, I think, is a whole other level of, with all due respect. And I love the Discovery Station.
I would tell you, there's a category of nonprofits that I personally call orphans. Great missions, great stewardship to the community, but maybe not in that bucket that needs the tax dollars. And some of them, and I'll name one, you all have heard about the Smithsonian Institute. They wanted to save the space suits that stepped on the moon in 1969, and they didn't have enough money. So they went to crowdsourcing. Not only did they get enough, that's where you go online and to different venues and say, help me fund this. Not only did they get enough to fund the first spacesuit, but the second one as well. They got more than enough. So I just think that tax dollars are good things spent on nonprofits, but I think we need to encourage more ingenuity. But you know what, guys? I'm going to take the last word on that. So stay tuned, because in 3 minutes we'll be back to discuss the possibility of a new Democratic presidential candidate. We'll be right back.